Hey, Shalom Akim, Shalom, Shalom, all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rakakwadash, double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone for teaching us his truth, and salutations to the sincere Akim and Akwatham and listen. May the blessing of election be upon your house. My name is Brother Requai. I'm back in here with another quick and Lord's will as always, an edifying lesson. And today's lesson, I just wanted to discuss the aura of a king. Okay, so what do I mean when I say that? It means, kings have a certain type of aura, presence, vibration that emanates from them, right? So, before I get started, let me go into the definition of the word aura, right? Because when you look at the society we live in, there is a heavy materialistic vibration upon, these people, especially the men of our nation, right? When you look at, I just use rappers as an example, right? So there's a heavy vibration to essentially accumulate, a lot of substance, right? But when you look at the type of person they are within the inside, their spiritual man has absolutely no substance. It's pretty much bankrupt. It's in a negative. It's non-sufficient funds, right? There's nothing much on the inside, but there is a heavier um I don't know the word to use. Essentially, there's a heavier focus. That's probably the best word. Yes, heavier focus of the man on the outside. He might look very. As a matter of fact, let me start with that precept. Actually, he might look, very very pleasant to the eyes. He might be. He might he might have a lot of physical substance, and this is not to knock the physical substance. It's just in this society there's a heavier focus on the outside rather than actually the inside, right? So let me read this right here in Sirach. This is Sirach chapter 11, verse 2. And it says, "Commend not a man for his beauty, neither abhor a man for his outward appearance." Right? So a person might look very pleasant on the outside, but on the inside they might be very, dark. There's no substance, right? And going back to the title, a lot of our people, I'm kind of speaking more specifically to the men, because there's a heavier vibration to essentially accumulate and essentially to disguise and have a lot of substance, and disguise is the lack thereof of the inside man, right? So what is the word aura, and where does that come from? Because briefly, what actually inspired this lesson was somebody, also, I was working on the plantation, and pretty much, there was something this woman said to me. She said, "Oh, you planted a seed in my head," right? And she essentially, this woman, she's in therapy, and basically there was something that I said to her, and it didn't resonate right away, but it kind of germinated. Whatever I said germinated in her spirit, right? And it essentially it galvanized her to change certain things, right? So pretty much the point is your presence is very it has a specific kind of atmosphere by just not just the way you conduct yourself, but also it has weight, it has a certain vibration, it has an aura, right? So a quality, right? So this is aura. I just typed it into Google here. It says a distinctive atmosphere or quality that seems to surround or be generated by a person, thing, or place. It says a supposed emanation surrounding the body of a living creature and regarded as an essential part of the individual, right? So it essentially is like a presence. Somebody is very taken by your presence, right? And this is something that will continue to happen when you continuously you delve into these scriptures and try and get more understanding, and sup with Yahweh Bashim Shai. This is it changes your aura, because your aura is not the way of this world, because the scriptures say that the wisdom of this world is absolutely foolish, right? When the book, the scriptures, is not a book of this world. It's a book of the heavens. It's godly counsel, you know. But let me get a couple precepts in regards to presence, and I kind of wanted to get and finish off with an account here, right? So let me go to, and again, this is not to knock the importance of having some substance, right? Because the scriptures do say also that money is a defense, right? So I'm not knocking it, but I'm knocking the essentially the lack of importance of the inside man. Because when you watch a lot of these people who have all these different podcasts, yes, they prioritize developing and acquiring the physical substance, but there is no emphasis on spiritual substance, right? There is no emphasis on having a healthier, for you Israelites, having a healthier relationship with Yahweh Bashim Shai, right? So this is the book of Sirach again, chapter 40, verse 26, and it says, riches and strength lift up the heart, but the fear of the Lord is above them both. There is no want in the fear of the Lord, and it needeth not to seek help, right? So these are two things that can definitely lift up the heart, because when you look at the nature of the society that we live in, a lot of people, and especially men, they boast. They have a very, very boastful mindset about the physical substance that they have, right? They don't have anything else they can actually be able to discuss or talk about, but they encapsulate their whole existence based on these physical things that they have. Oh, I have this nice car or whatever, right? But nothing else is rolling around in their noggin. You know what I'm saying? Other than all the just the cheap things that they've acquired, right? So but a fear of the Lord, like it says, is above them both. Because when you think about it, a lot of these people, especially our people, they don't fear the Heavenly Father, right? So, and what does that do? It creates a certain level of reverence. It creates it molds proper conduct, right? And how to actually navigate this valley shadow of death, right? So let me go to okay, let me get the account in regards to this atmosphere that I'm speaking of here. Second Chronicles, what's that? 1 second. Okay, let me get it also in, let's see how it reads in the NLT. Just bear with me and let me just do this right. Okay, this is so going back to the definition here. Remember, one of the definition was quality, atmosphere, ambiance, character, right? So this is the book of Second Chronicles, chapter 9. I'll start at verse 1 and I'll read down. And it says, when the queen of Sheba heard of Solomon's fame, she came to Jerusalem to test him with hard questions. She arrived in a large group of attendants and a great caravan of camels loaded with spices, large quantities of gold, precious jewels. Excuse me. When she met with Solomon, she talked with him about everything she had on her mind. Solomon answered all of her questions. Nothing was too hard for him to explain to her. When the queen of Sheba realized how wise Solomon was, and when she saw the palace which he had built, she was overwhelmed. She was also amazed at the food on his tables, the organization of his officials, their splendid clothing, their cupbearers and their robes, and the burnt offerings Solomon made Solomon made at the temple of the Lord, right? So, she's coming into a king's presence. And that's when you go back into, I believe it's the third chapter in Kings, First Kings, that was one of the things that Solomon prayed for. He prayed, for wisdom. And, just like how makeup, adorns a woman's face, wisdom adorns a man's face. Right? The scriptures say it maketh his face to shine. Right? So her being in King Solomon's presence, she was basically kind of like starstruck, like her jaws on the floor. She's very, very taken, like what people say in the world, breathtaking, by his presence. Because, like, my goodness, like, your Solomon, I'm sorry, your servants are. Is that linen the servants are wearing? Look at the cupbearers. Look at the gold. Look at what they're, how they conduct themselves. Right? The scriptures say how a wise king instructs his people. Right? And the government of a prudent man is well ordered. So her being in King Solomon's presence, she's seeing that wisdom translating into and manifesting in the physical. But I'm showing this and expounding on this to show the contrast, right? Yes, he is a king, but most importantly, he had spiritual substance. He wasn't just a regular Pookie and Ray Ray sagging his pants at the middle of the road, asking for $1 or whatever it is. He had morals, he had standards, he had a certain level of ambiance, he had an aura, to him. There was an aura that was attracting him. It was something that was way beyond the physical. It wasn't just about, because it says that she came to test him with hard questions, right? And he was able to answer those things because the Lord blessed him with the wisdom and the understanding on how to actually govern, right? And another thing also, King David, before he passed, he gave Solomon a charge to essentially keep the commandments and show yourself a man, right? Let me go to, I'll get this one in last here. This is, where is it? Just bear with me, hold on. Okay, this is Wisdom of Solomon, 7 and 17. And it says, for he hath given me a certain knowledge of things that are, namely, to know how the world was made, and the operation of the elements, and the beginning, the ending, and the midst of the times, the alteration of the turning of the sun, and the change of seasons, the circuits of the years, the position of stars, the nature of living creatures, flurries of wild beasts, violence of the winds, and the reasonings of men, the diversities of plants, and the virtues of roots. All such things as are either secret or manifest, them I know. So all these different things, he was knowledgeable on all these different things. the different plants that were growing on the ground, the different types of beasts and what the kind of beasts, what those beasts do for the environment, understanding the moon and how it works, the understanding, the stars, understanding. He just had a he was just very well rounded, right? And that added to his aura, that made him more glowing, so to speak. Right? So um I might make a part two to this, but I just wanted to kind of just touch on that real quick. Hold on, let me actually read down here. So this is her reaction. This is Second Chronicles 9:5, and it says, she exclaimed to the king, everything I heard from my country about your achievements and the wisdom is true. I didn't believe what was said until I arrived here and saw it with my own eyes. In fact, I had not heard of my part. I'm sorry, I have not heard the half of your great wisdom. It is far beyond what I was told, right? So essentially, he had a reputation that superseded the physical borders, right? So that is something that, the blessings of what happens when, as he was dwelling with wisdom, right? So, anyways, I'll leave the lesson there, but it shows you the importance of spiritual riches. As a matter of fact, I'll end off with this last precept, right? Hold on. This is a good one. Luke 12. Just going into the parable. So this is Luke 12:20. So this is the parable of the rich fool. Let's read the end here. But it says, but the Most High, Yahweh Bashmel Shai, said unto him, you fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get everything you worked for? Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with Yahweh Bashmel Shai, right? So, he didn't, his priorities was more to stack up a bunch of earthly riches rather than actually obtaining a rich relationship with Yahweh Bashmel Shai, right? So, anyways, I'll leave it there, but hopefully this video and lesson was edifying. Just like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, Bashem Kakwadash, double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone for teaching us the truth. Until next time, I say Shalom.